Hey everybody, Brian Zayn here, and welcome to my review of Roadblock 2, The Blockening. But before we talk about Roadblock, I do want to discuss something that happened earlier in the week that's far more important than Roadblock, goodness knows. Of course, I'm talking about Total Nonstop Deletion. I didn't originally plan to do a video review about the show. I just decided to leave things to Facebook and Twitter and just leave it at that, but so many people asked me to talk about it, and plus after seeing Roadblock, I just wanted to get some things off my chest about what I thought about Total Nonstop Deletion, so I figured I'll just lump the two things together here. If you don't want to hear me talk about Total Nonstop Deletion, you just want to fast forward right ahead to the Roadblock review, go to the description area, look at the time code for when Roadblock stuff begins, just click on that and it'll jump right ahead. But let's talk about Total Nonstop Deletion. It was 2 hours of wackiness, insanity, and I loved every minute of it. Let's just break it down here. First of all, TNA took a tremendous risk in doing this show at all. How often have you ever heard of a wrestling promotion just saying, okay, we're going to totally break away from the normal what we do. The normal layout is just gone. Here is this passion project, this basically this concept album essentially of the Hardy Boys. I mean, granted, there were a couple other storylines happening throughout the show, the first half of Total Nonstop Deletion, but make no mistake, it was 100% Hardy Boys stuff. The first 20 minutes, you saw a match with a toddler and a face-off with a drone. You had the in-ring debut of Itchweed, and look, I've seen matches at indie shows where people have used weed whackers for weapons, and it's disgusting stuff. It's just blood everywhere. It's horrifying. But so I thought it was a little weird when they show him using the weed whacker on the guy, and it just tore his clothes up in a weird cartoony kind of thing. That was kind of weird. The match with Eddie Edwards and Bobby Lashley I thought was great, even when it spilled out to the outside, and it never actually reached a conclusion. I watched the whole show a couple of times. I'm like, no, there never was a finish. Even when they were on the outside, they were fighting there. But yeah, that match was cool. Power bombing Edwards into the crowd. That I've never seen a spot like that before. That was pretty crazy, seeing all the crowd involved in that. But anyway, then the whole second half is just apocalypto. It's the transition from this we're trying to do a legitimate wrestling show in this weird environment, and then all of a sudden, oh my god, we have to evacuate. That was really weird. Credit to Borash and Matthews, by the way, for just delivering everything with the utmost sincerity and integrity. We mean everything we say. Everything here is so serious. They took it very seriously in their delivery of the play-by-play, which I thought made it even more campy and just more awesome in that regard. I popped so much for all the different people who showed up. You had Swoggle showing up. You had the Rock and Roll Express. You had the return of 3 Count very briefly, and then Shane Helms became the Hurricane. Oh my god, they gave him special effects where he teleports it out the green. WWE never did that with the Hurricane, and that they had the budget to do it. But with this, with Impact, Total Nonstop Deletion, you give the Hurricane the superpowers and the effects that a character like that really should have. That was amazing. You had Abyss and Crazy Steve basically straight up killing people, which was kind of horrifying to watch, because you rarely see death in wrestling, and so to see that was really kind of ooh, at one point it was kind of shocking, but when you watch it a second time, it's just more kind of funny. You had Bobby Lashley no-selling a spear attempt by Hornswoggle. That was pretty hilarious. The biggest highlight for me besides Hurricane was the stuff earlier when you had 3 grown men beating up a boat. Just stomping on a boat like there was a guy, because the boat Skarsgård moved and caused the break up the pinfall. Yeah, the Rock and Roll Express and the Hardy Boys fighting in the macro sense, if you didn't put this weird filter on it, it's a kind of a dream match in a way. So, but when you have Ricky Morton and Jeff Hardy trading out wrist locks on cherry pickers, it kind of puts things up to a whole new level. Jeff Hardy doing the swanton off the top of the cherry picker and missing. That looked like a pretty stiff looking bump. You had a firework battle between Vanguard 1 and Abyss. Abyss getting shot in the eye with a firework. Holy shit. You had Crazy Steve falling into and being launched out of a volcano. You had a Triple H dig at one point. They did the whole thing with Hardy and Hurricane. So, oh, we've buried these young upcoming talents. And they do a thumbs up whoa, I guess Matt Hardy's not getting signed after all. The rumors are not going to be true with that one. And in the end, the Hardys win, and it just turns out it was one giant, elaborate, insane pregnancy announcement. It was one of the most insane 2 hours I've ever seen in my life. But if you think really hard and look really hard about it, all these crazy interlocking storylines that happened throughout, especially in the second half during Apocalypto. So in a weird way, it was this very coherent, but still kind of very bizarre story, all capping off at the end with the Hardys winning. I think when you get right down to it, it's everything that the Final Deletion was. And boy, how silly does the word Final Deletion sound now in hindsight. Everything the Final Deletion was, but just bumped up to like the zenith of what it could possibly be. They took all the different tropes and everything, and they just like magnified it a million times over with all these cameos and all the different twisting, interlocking plot lines. You had big spots, you had memorable moments, you had fan service, you had a great aesthetic. I love just the whole concept of like them turning the Hardy compound into an arena, and the way they shot everything was great from beginning to end. I love the way they kind of like shot around and kind of like did some photography tricks to make Maxwell look like he was actually doing stuff in the ring in his match with the Rockstars. But in all, I thought it was a lot of fun. Like, that show got an A+ for me. You know, was it wrestling at the end of the day? No, not really. But like I said before in my final deletion, on my Delete or Decay and the Great War stuff, I think it's just about wrestling has to be fun, to be enjoyable. Not everybody gets their fun from this kind of stuff. I think for some people it's just a little too different, a little too over the top. But I think if you're like me and you don't take wrestling so seriously and you don't think it all has to be, you know, angry men and stiff moves and strong style and kicking with the leg slapping and everything, I think when you expand what you think wrestling can be, then I think if you go into this with an open mind, I think it's some of the most entertaining stuff you'll see in wrestling all year. It's a shitload more interesting than what I've seen from WWE this year. Okay, enough about that. Time to talk about Roadblock. End of the line. Starting off with the pre-show, Big Cass taking on Rusev. Considering this storyline is one of the bigger mid-card storylines right now on Raw, I find it very interesting it got moved to the pre-show, but you know, something had to go there, so I guess statistically speaking, that was the match for that. The match ends when they go out to the crowd, kind of incorporating the 2K17 features. They do some crowd brawling. As they're making their way around the crowd, Lana decks Enzo, Rusev decks Enzo, Cass checks on Enzo, gets counted out, so there's no definitive winner here. Obviously, this storyline is going to continue, maybe into the Royal Rumble and beyond, but it's not a bad way to finish the match because, you know, there's more to this story than just what they've done the last 3 weeks. Again, I don't think they've tackled this storyline the best, most tasteful way they possibly could. I think now that they've gotten the whole beatdown in the hotel room out of the way, I think it might be a little better. We'll see. I don't know. I don't think Enzo quite learned his lesson because I think the way, you know, again, some of the comments he made to Lana tonight weren't the best in the world. But it's Enzo being Enzo, so it's just you have to take the good with the bad on that one. Tag Team Championships, the New Day defending against Cesaro and Sheamus. This match, you know, this is kind of a recurring theme throughout the night. It's matches we've seen a lot of before. And, you know, I really should put this phrase on a shirt. Both shows are guilty of doing this because you see a lot of the repeat things on Raw and SmackDown. But yeah, I mean, we've seen these two teams fight before. We saw them do it at Hell in a Cell, and we saw them do it on Raw in the build up to their big history-making match on Raw this last week. So it's happened before. There was a spot where Sheamus had the white noise and then Cesaro came down and did something. The camera angle didn't make it look very good. I had no idea what exactly Cesaro did in that spot to make the move more effective. There was kind of a confusing double team move in my opinion. There was a little, great back and forth. I thought the false finishes they have were very good. And I think what they've done, especially with the New Day and with the right opponents, the false finishes look amazing. And you think, oh my God, this is really going to happen. I think with Cesaro and Sheamus especially, when they wrestle each other, these two teams, the false finishes are great, and that's one of my highlights of the match. But holy hell, Cesaro and Sheamus, they did it. They broke the streak. The 483-day tag team title reign of the New Day is over, done and dusted by Cesaro and Sheamus. That whole finishing sequence with Cesaro with the misdirection, I thought, I think we all kind of thought it was a botch, but then it was actually this really ingenious thing. I don't think I've ever seen a finish like that before, ever in wrestling. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Post in the comments if you've seen something like that. I said a few weeks ago when the New Day were doing more healer stuff to retain, I was under the impression that it was going to build to a more like deliberate heel turn, and then once the belts were taken off them by Cesaro and Sheamus, is what I was predicting, that it would mean a lot more. Obviously, the fact that they held the belts for so long, they beat Demolition's record, then they lost it, that still means something. It still means a lot that a reign like that gets ended by a team that is more or less likable, like Cesaro and Sheamus. Kind of odd couple. These guys don't like each other, but they have a bit of a rapport. Like, there's still a good moment in that, but I think the moment could have been better if the New Day were heels, kind of like with CM Punk when he turned heel in the middle of his WWE Championship run, and so when he lost the belt, it meant a little more, in my opinion. I think when you have kind of like a face team and kind of a face-ish tweener team, actually both teams are kind of like that, they're face-ish tweener kind of thing. When you have a match like that and the titles change hands, to me it doesn't feel the same. I think if it's more clear dichotomy of face and heel, it does mean more. But, that's a bit of cherry picking. It's a bit of nitpicking, I should say. So, but yeah, Cesaro and Sheamus, they win, and those two guys, they just can't seem to get along. Womp womp. Sami Zayn taking on Braun Strowman. Sami Zayn had to try and last 10 minutes with the big man. I was nervous about this. How are they going to make a 10-minute match, a singles match with Braun Strowman look good? Like, is he ready for that? Because I remember just, this time last year when he was part of the Wyatts, he looked pretty damn green in tag team scenarios. Can't imagine how he would look in singles, but like, this is his first, I think, really big test. And I think he passed with flying colors. Like, the way they booked it, I thought was pretty brilliant. The fact that he was just beating the shit out of Sami Zayn for the bulk of it. Then a slim, trim Mick Foley comes out and is ready to throw a towel in on behalf of Sami, but Sami says, no, not like that. And then, like, he finally gets some offense in. He kind of gets Strowman woozy a little bit. He doesn't win. He hits one haluva kick. He goes for a second one, but time expires. Braun doesn't look weak because he didn't actually get beaten. He didn't get pinned, didn't tap out, nothing. Meanwhile, Sami Zayn looks incredible because he lasted 10 minutes with this monster, and he lived to tell the tale, and he didn't get beat officially. In terms of just like storyline and character building, this match is probably like the better one of the night in terms of just those kind of things. And in match quality, it wasn't a 5-star classic, but I think Braun Strowman looked good for what he did, and Sami Zayn, he's one of the best just sellers in the business today, especially on WWE. So yeah, I had no problem with this match. Chris Jericho and Seth Rollins, again, we've seen this match before. Nothing was new here. There were no stipulations. There was nothing on the line. It was just kind of like, it was just kind of there. And again, these two always have good matches with each other. There's no problem with that. I particularly loved the little sequence out of the pedigree attempt into the flip over powerbomb attempt into the Hurricane Rana. That was a really cool attempt. I loved that sequence. That was great. I loved the story of Seth Rollins trying the entire match to hit the pedigree. Like, he tried like 4 or 5 times and he finally got it. And then there's the payoff there. So that was just classic storytelling. But again, we've seen this match before. You right on down to Kevin Owens trying to interfere. So yeah, I mean, good match, but nothing was at stake. There were no stakes involved. I want some steak now. Talking about steaks, I kind of want a steak, but that's neither here nor there. Cruiserweight Championship on the line as Rich Swann defends against TJ Perkins and Brian Kendrick in a triple threat. The crowd is deadzo for this. You have effectively killed the Cruiserweight division. Great job, McMahon's et al. Not much I really had to say about this match. The referee looked stupid for making TJ Perkins break the knee bar after the rope break because you can't get a disqualification in a triple threat. So the ref looked stupid for making TJ Perkins break it, and TJ Perkins looked dumber for actually breaking it. The match ends when there's the tandem super kick to Kendrick, and then Swann kicks TJ Perkins, retains, and then immediately Neville comes back. Yay, we haven't seen Neville in forever. This is a guy who really does belong in the Cruiserweight division. Like, he should have been like a cornerstone of it from the beginning. But he comes back and he turns heel. He beats up the faces. And yeah, Neville's back as he's probably going to be in line to be the top heel in the Cruiserweight division now. Now, I have a problem with this because it's very difficult to have a convincing heel character when your finisher is as cool and exciting to watch as the Red Arrow, but they might make things a little different. They might just take away that finisher and give him something else, which, great! Women's title on the line in a 30-minute Iron Man match. Sasha Banks defending against Charlotte in a match that, a lot of conflicting opinions on this one. Both, what I've seen online and also in my own head, a lot of conflicting thoughts with this thing. The first half of the match I didn't think was anything special. It wasn't until like the halfway point when Charlotte kicked Sasha's leg out from under her leg on the apron and she face plants on the stairs, things turned into a different match essentially. And so you had Sasha just selling, kicking out over and over again, making her look really strong, and then you had the back and forth with the pinfalls and the submissions and stuff. I think the biggest problem they had with this match was at the end of regulation when Sasha taps out with 2 seconds to go and forcing a tie and forcing an overtime. I don't have a problem with the 2 seconds beforehand, but I don't think it's Sasha's thing to do. I think if they switched it up and if Charlotte tapped with 2 seconds to go and tying it up there, that would have been much more satisfying because Charlotte's coming from behind, she ties it up at the last second. I don't think it's dumb when someone taps out like 2 seconds before the end of the match because, when your ankle is being ripped to shreds, and you're trying to think about preserving yourself to fight another day or sticking out through it and possibly risking your career, I don't think it's that unreasonable or that illogical for someone to tap out, especially if they don't see the clock. 2 seconds could be an hour to them. So I don't blame them for having someone tap out at 2 seconds to go. But I think they should have switched who did it because having Sasha come back from behind at the very end would have been more captivating. But instead, what they did was they had her lose twice. They had her tap out at the very end of regulation, and then she tapped out again. And again, the overtime stuff was dramatic too. Sasha getting bloodied. I don't know what happened there to make her bleed so much. And, you know, I think in defeat, if it, you know, the whole thing at the end of regulation aside, I think Sasha Banks looked amazing in defeat. I think, you know, you can dispute the finish all you want, but I think a bloody Sasha Banks fighting in the figure eight, I think that's going to be one of her career-defining moments. Not the same thing as like Austin in the sharpshooter at WrestleMania 13 because he passed out, he didn't tap. The parallels are there. I think, you know, I think you can have memorable moments as a career and like have them not all be like winning moments. Like Mick Foley, you know, he spent a lot of his career looking up at the lights and like he had some of his biggest moments in losing efforts. So I don't think, you know, I think, you know, when you just look at that one moment in the bubble, I think it's pretty cool. But again, I think the problem with the booking was they made her lose twice in one match. And I don't think that was the best way to go about it. As far as, you know, the hot potatoing, hopefully it's finally done now. This was the end of the rivalry for right now. I'm sure they'll bring it up later in a year or maybe 6 months or so. So yeah, but they're not going to hot potato it right now. The first couple times they switched it, I thought it was interesting. You know, like I said in a previous review, I think it was when Sasha won it most recently on Raw. I think, you know, when they fight for it that hard, it adds value to the championship because it shows you how much they want it. But I think ultimately in this rivalry, Sasha Banks did not look very strong because she never once successfully defended the championship. It was just a weird pattern they did. Like, it's A, B, A, B. It was Sasha wins on Raw, Charlotte, you know, gets the belt back at a pay-per-view. And it got, you know, very predictable in that way. I think people were expecting Ric Flair to come back and kind of swerve us and do shenanigans to help cost Sasha the match. That didn't happen. I think that would have made it a little more overbooked than it needed to be. But yeah, my biggest problem with this was Sasha losing twice in this thing. It could have gone a little differently. I think if they made one or two small changes, it could have been that much better. I think ultimately this match was probably the best one of the night, at least the last 15 minutes, last 17, 18 minutes if you include overtime. Probably the best of the show, you know. And like I said, Zayn and Strowman, character building wise, was the best. But yeah, I mean, this one still had a lot of problems. Main event time, Universal Championship on the line as Kevin Owens defends against Roman Reigns, the United States Champion. Again, this is the problem that plagued pretty much the whole show, which is matches we've seen before and matches that like had a lot of similar spots. Now granted, this was, again, in a bubble, a fun match to watch because these guys just beat the piss out of each other the whole time. I thought the physicality of the match was great. Again, it just felt weird because we saw it like 3 weeks ago when they fought each other on Raw and Roman won. And you kind of knew going in that Roman wasn't going to win this time because he won on Raw. But I'm not saying it was a bad match. It wasn't. I think in the grand scheme of things, it was still a good match. There's just, again, the lack of stakes because you kind of see what's coming. And then the one thing I didn't really see coming, I knew Jericho was going to be involved somehow, but I didn't really know what he was going to do. So he actually winds up hitting Kevin Owens. You think they're broken up, and then it turns out, oh, swerve. I was just hitting him with one of my more devastating moves to help him. So Owens and Jericho are friends again. For a much more prolonged period of time, they teased the breakup. I wonder how many more times they're going to do this where they tease Kevin Owens and Jericho breaking up before it finally happens, and once they finally do it, will it mean as much because they've cried wolf so many times? So yeah, Roman Reigns loses the match by disqualification because Jericho interfered on Kevin Owens' behalf by beating up Kevin Owens. So yeah, Kevin Owens retains the belt, but the fans get sent home happy when Seth Rollins comes out, and Rollins and Reigns take turns beating up Jericho and Owens at the end, putting them through tables. The fans go home happy. Who wore it better? You know, back in October when I compared Hell in a Cell to No Mercy, I chose Hell in a Cell over No Mercy because ultimately the Cell matches, just by virtue of them being Cell matches, added a level of spice and mystique to it that made it more interesting to watch than No Mercy. And so I'm getting kind of the same vibe this month. First of all, TLC wins by a landslide, make no mistake about that, but it would be a disservice for me to say the only reason I liked TLC more was because of the weapons. It helped, but I think the biggest problem we had with Roadblock tonight was just so much of the same old, same old. We've seen these matchups every single week, every 2 and 3 weeks on Raw. TLC, we saw some rematches, we saw some matches we've seen before, but like at least with the world title with Ambrose and Styles, it was a match that by itself hadn't been seen since Backlash. Like, they did a good job keeping these two apart. So yeah, ultimately TLC wins this month in terms of brand exclusive pay-per-views. TLC wasn't perfect, but boy, Roadblock was not that great. I never actually even gave a grade for Roadblock. So I guess off the top of my head, I'd have to give it C+. Again, the New Day and the Cesaro Sheamus match was a lot of fun, especially the finish, the big history of that. Sami Zayn Strowman was kind of a sleeper hit. If you just kind of look past like the one-sidedness of it all, I think, again, story storytelling-wise, it was an amazing match, and that was pretty much it. Like, I can't think of anything else really that really blew me away. Again, Neville coming back was cool, but him being a heel is weird, and I'm curious to see where it goes with that, but that's really all I have to say about Roadblock this month. Let me know what you thought about Roadblock in the comment section below. And while we're at it, talk about Total Nonstop Deletion too. Boy, I actually want to go on YouTube and pull that back up because that would be a nice palate cleanser from Roadblock tonight. Let me know what you thought about all that stuff in the comment section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zayn, and I'll see you next time.